The mug slipped from my hand and hit the edge of the counter. Coffee splashed across the floor, soaking into the rug. I didn't move. My eyes were locked on the phone in my other hand, the glow of the screen suddenly too bright for 6 in the morning. You deserve to know. That was all the message said. No name. No explanation. Just a sentence, and 2 attached images. I tapped the first one. It opened slowly, pixels sharpening like a cruel joke. Ava. She was sitting at a candlelit table in a quiet restaurant. Her shoulders were angled forward, head tilted slightly, smiling across the table at a man I recognized instantly. Dr. Caleb Rhodes. Our therapist. His hand rested on hers, fingers lightly threaded. He was smiling, too. The second image was worse. Closer. Her eyes were closed. Their lips met in the center of the frame, unmistakably, unashamed. A kiss. Not awkward, not new. Familiar. The rest of the room faded. I felt my knees lock. The metallic sting of coffee hit the air. The soft static from Eliza's baby monitor buzzed on the counter behind me, indifferent to the shift in my world. I didn't breathe. I just stared. Ava was still upstairs, getting ready for the day. I could hear drawers opening, the sink running. She was humming. Humming. I saved the photos, emailed them to myself, and backed them up to the cloud. Then I deleted the text. Erased the number. My hands moved automatically. I didn't want to ask who sent them. Whoever it was had already done what mattered. Ava walked in moments later, barefoot, still in her robe. You're up early. Couldn't sleep. She poured orange juice into a glass and leaned against the counter. Therapy's today, remember? I know you've got the client pitch, but Caleb said he can shift us to 7 if we need. I nodded. 7 works. She smiled, kissed my cheek, and headed off to change. The same routine as always. Seamless. Effortless. Except now I knew. 3 nights ago, she said she needed space. A solo drive down the coast. A night to think things through. I just need quiet, she'd told me. I want to come back clear-eyed. I believed her. I tucked a blanket into the back seat for her. I packed snacks. And while I waited for her to find herself, she found someone else's mouth. The therapist we'd been seeing for 8 months. The man who guided us through raw confessions, through fights about resentment and touch and distance. He'd said Ava was guarded but growth-minded. He said I was structured and emotionally restrained. He wasn't wrong. I was restrained. Even now, as betrayal scorched my throat like burned coffee, I stood quietly in the kitchen and cleaned the spill. I wrung the rag out slowly, methodically, then rinsed the mug twice before setting it back in the drying rack. When the house was silent again, I sat down with my laptop. Created a new folder. Ava_Rhodes. I uploaded the images. Renamed them with timestamps. Organized the files. The folder looked empty, but I knew it wouldn't stay that way for long. I looked out the window into the backyard, the maple tree we planted when Eliza was born, the broken stone path I kept meaning to fix. I used to imagine family barbecues here. Teen birthdays. Grandkids, maybe. That was before I learned I'd been sharing my marriage with the man I paid to save it. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I documented. Because whatever came next wouldn't be emotional. It would be deliberate. It's strange what memories surface when you begin to doubt everything. You don't start with the obvious ones, the anniversary dinners, the beach trip, the night you danced barefoot in the living room after the power went out. You start with the in-between moments. The ones that now feel like setups instead of memories. Like the time Ava came home from therapy with Caleb and said, "He really gets me." Her voice soft. Her eyes damp. I remember how I nodded, relieved that someone had broken through her quiet fog. She had been distant for months, and I thought the therapy was helping. Now I wondered if it had only pulled her further away. Our life wasn't perfect, but it was whole. We had our routines, Eliza's preschool drop-offs, our Sunday pancake ritual, weekend runs at the lake. Ava was a creature of habit. She lit candles at night, always two, and drank tea while watching documentaries I could never get into. I used to tease her about it, and she used to laugh. The laughter stopped gradually. I didn't notice the silence when it crept in. Not until it settled between us like furniture no one used. I began retracing things in my mind. The extra therapy sessions, individual growth work, she'd called them. The late-night walks where she left her phone at home. The moment she disabled Face ID for privacy, saying it was just a safety precaution. She said she needed space. I gave her oceans. Now I was left to measure the depths. The first thing I did was check our insurance portal. Caleb billed under relational trauma and rebuilding, but every visit was coded the same, individual, not couples. I printed the receipts. Ava had told me some of those sessions were joint. I found 5 that weren't. Next, I checked our shared calendar. We both used it to log appointments, even casual ones. There were gaps, stretches labeled writing session or bookstore visit. Some overlapped with Caleb's office hours. I highlighted those. Labeled them yellow. I remembered she once asked me to stop picking her up from therapy. It feels weird, she'd said. I need time to decompress after. Now I understood why. I wasn't decompressing. I was being dismissed. I sat at my desk late into the night, toggling between apps, screenshots, call logs. She had deleted most of her texts with Caleb, but one backup still synced to our shared laptop. It was partial, fragmented, but enough. Your voice stayed with me all night. I keep seeing your face across the room, even when it's not there. I don't know where this leaves us. But I don't want it to stop. No names. But the timestamps matched her therapy visits. I copied and saved everything. Labeled each file with a red tag. I kept my routine the same. Made breakfast. Smiled when Ava walked in. Tucked Eliza into bed each night. But behind the scenes, I was archiving every trace of her double life. I didn't ask her questions. I didn't confront her. I listened. She spoke in half-truths. Caleb thinks we're close to a breakthrough. He says I've got patterns I'm still unlearning. He says the way you manage emotion can be overwhelming. She quoted him like scripture. Always, he says. Never, I feel. Eventually, I reached out to someone I trusted, Brian, my oldest friend. A quiet, grounded guy who had known Ava since college and knew how to listen without flinching. We sat in the park after work, passing a coffee back and forth. I need to ask you something, I said. And I need you to be honest. He looked at me. Okay. Do you think she's in love with him? He didn't answer right away. Then he said, I think she talks about him like someone she wishes she'd met first. That was enough. I stared down at the grass. She told me therapy was helping. I believed her. Maybe it was, he said. But maybe it helped her into something she doesn't know how to walk out of. A week later, I called a woman named Lila Martinez, recommended by a colleague at work. A top-tier family lawyer. When we met, I didn't flinch when I told her who the other man was. She did. Your wife is sleeping with your therapist. Our therapist, I corrected. She blinked. Do you have proof? Yes. And I'm getting more. She looked at me for a long time. You're unusually calm. I nodded. I don't believe in chaos. I believe in case files. We discussed strategy. The risks of confronting Ava prematurely. The legal leverage a dual betrayal like this could offer in custody hearings. Especially if the affair involved a breach of professional ethics. Most judges don't care why a marriage ends, she said. But they do care about what kind of people parents are. I nodded. I'm building that case. Then keep documenting. No threats. No drama. Let her believe you still don't know. I left her office with a checklist and a folder. That night, Ava kissed my cheek before bed. I said, good night. But in my mind, I was already writing the closing paragraph to our final session. By the second week, my strategy had a rhythm, quiet, methodical, emotionless. I wasn't interested in confrontation. Not yet. That wasn't the goal. I wanted structure. Truth. Leverage. The kind that couldn't be dismissed as jealousy or paranoia. I kept showing up, at work, at home, in therapy. Letting Ava believe I was still invested in our healing. She spoke with such conviction in those sessions. "I think we're turning a corner," she told Caleb once, her hand brushing her knee instead of mine. "We've learned so much from these talks." I nodded and said little. I watched him more than I watched her. His body language. His soft-spoken affirmations. The way he leaned forward just slightly every time she spoke. I knew those cues now. I'd seen them in the photos. They were part of a private language, now hidden in plain sight. That night, I returned to Lila's office with a USB drive and a new stack of printed screenshots. Text fragments recovered from a cloud archive. GPS location logs showing Ava's phone lingering at Caleb's apartment after hours. A receipt for a bottle of wine she claimed she bought for book club, but which matched a brand he posted on his Instagram stories the same day. Lila opened each file slowly, her expression unreadable. When she was done, she looked up. "This is airtight. Enough to push for primary custody?" "Absolutely. And more than enough to trigger a review board investigation against him if you choose to file." I paused. "What happens to her?" "She doesn't go to jail, if that's what you mean. But this will stick in court. Especially if we can show how their relationship affected Eliza's home stability." Ava was still staying out late once a week under the pretense of individual growth work. I marked every date. Every return time. Installed a doorbell camera and a hidden motion sensor in the hallway. I watched her exit in silence. I watched her come back. I never stopped her. That wasn't the point. The point was documentation. I also started therapy, real therapy. With someone Lila recommended. A man named Dr. Patel. Sharp, calm, no tolerance for self-pity. "You're grieving your identity," he said in our first session. "Not just your marriage. That's the part people skip over." I told him about Ava. About Caleb. About the lies folded into healing. He didn't flinch. "So what do you want?" he asked. "Stability," I said. "For me and Eliza. Then don't chase retribution. Just build the better life." That stayed with me. I began redirecting my energy. I fixed things around the house, tightened loose hinges, repainted trim. I reorganized our bills, filed tax updates, removed Ava from certain accounts. I opened a new checking account in just my name and started transferring half of my paycheck there each cycle. Brian, my best friend, came over every Friday to play chess and drink black coffee. He never asked for details, but he always brought a bottle of whiskey just in case. One night, he said, "You know she's going to crumble when you show your hand." "I'm not doing it for her reaction," I replied. "I'm doing it so I don't have to look over my shoulder anymore." He raised his glass. "To clean exits." I started sleeping better. Ava didn't notice the shift. Or maybe she did and chose not to ask. Either way, the house felt less like a minefield and more like a puzzle I was slowly solving. I wrote down every interaction with her after that, dates, times, tone of voice. Kept them in a black notebook I slid into a drawer each night. One evening, she walked past it on the counter, glanced at it, and kept walking. I didn't panic. That silence was another kind of evidence. I spoke to my father, too. A man who spent 40 years in the same marriage, same house, same Sunday breakfast chair. I didn't know how he'd take the news, but when I told him over coffee, he just nodded and placed his weathered hand over mine. "She made her choices," he said. "You make yours." He didn't ask for details. Just offered me one sentence of advice: don't teach Eliza that love means tolerating lies. So I didn't. I scheduled a custody review. Quietly. Sent Ava an email requesting she sign a notice of intent to mediate. No accusations. No explanations. She called me 20 minutes later. "What is this?" Her voice was sharp. "A custody review." "I think we need to put things in writing," I said evenly. "For clarity." "You're going behind my back." I paused. I'm going forward. You just didn't see it coming. Silence. Then, is this about us, or about him? Yes. She didn't respond. I didn't press. The next morning, she left a little earlier than usual. I watched her through the motion camera. Same coat. Same direction. That evening, I placed the final document in the folder, a notarized affidavit from a friend of Caleb's ex-wife, confirming they'd seen Ava leave his apartment after midnight multiple times over the last 2 months. With that, I closed the folder. The evidence was no longer a web. It was a straight line. All that was left was to walk it. The room looked the same as always. Warm-toned walls, low lighting, 2 chairs angled just enough to feel intimate but not confrontational. The box of tissues on the side table was untouched. Dr. Caleb Rhodes sat with his usual calm, legs crossed, hands folded over a notepad that didn't hold our names anymore, only the illusion that he still had authority in this space. Ava sat beside me, unaware. Still wearing the pale gray sweater she always wore to sessions, the one I once said made her look like someone who'd never hurt anyone. She leaned forward. I've been thinking about last week's session, and I really feel like we're making progress. Caleb smiled in response, looking between us. That's good to hear. Have you both been practicing the communication exercises we discussed? I looked at Ava. I have something I'd like to share today. Of course, he said. I pulled out the folder from my bag and set it down on the table between us. Not fast. Not loud. Just deliberate. Ava blinked. What's that? I looked at Caleb. Go ahead. You first. He hesitated, fingers twitching. I'm not sure what you mean. This is the part, I said, where you stop pretending. I opened the folder. The photographs were on top, printed in full color. Their dinner, their kiss. Beneath that, insurance statements, calendar overlaps, screenshots of texts recovered from our cloud backup. A copy of a notarized affidavit. Ava went pale. Caleb leaned back slowly, the breath leaving his body in a tight, measured exhale. I didn't want to do this here, I said, turning to her, but I figured if we're ending something, it might as well happen in the room where the lies began. Please, Ava whispered. Let me explain. Explain which part? I asked. The dinners? The deleted texts? The hotel charges under your name on the same night you told me you were sleeping at your sister's. Her hand gripped the side of the chair. Caleb remained silent. You told me therapy was helping, I said. And maybe it was. It helped you find your next partner. That's a breakthrough, right? She closed her eyes. You weren't just cheating on me, I continued. You were doing it with the one person we both agreed to trust. Someone who had access to everything we said, everything we felt. You turned intimacy into surveillance. Caleb tried to speak. This is a misunderstanding. No, I cut in. This is documented. This is confirmed. And this, I tapped the folder, is going to your ethics board tomorrow morning. Ava started to cry. Caleb didn't move. I'm not here to yell, I said, softer now. That's not who I am. But I am here to end this. And I want you both to understand, what you did wasn't just immoral. It was calculated. And it had consequences. I pulled out the final item in the folder, a photo of Eliza in our backyard, holding her stuffed bear, the maple tree behind her. This is who I'm fighting for, I said. Not you. Not revenge. Her. A long silence followed. Then I stood. Collected the folder. Tucked it back into my bag. Ava didn't reach for me. Caleb didn't apologize. The silence between them said everything. As I walked toward the door, I paused. I'll be in touch through the lawyer. And then I left. I didn't slam the door. It closed quietly behind me, just like the session, just like the marriage. The silence that followed wasn't empty, it was clean. 3 days after the confrontation, Ava moved out. She didn't fight it. She signed the mediated custody agreement without delay. Maybe it was guilt, maybe exhaustion. Maybe she realized the illusion had run its course. I stayed in the house. Eliza stayed with me. Ava saw her on alternating weekends, as agreed. She never brought up Caleb again. Neither did I. The wedding photo that once hung in the hallway came down. I didn't burn it. I didn't bury it. I placed it gently in a box labeled past, along with anniversary cards, dried flowers, and the receipt from our honeymoon suite. I didn't need reminders on the walls anymore. I had the lessons etched into me. I picked up where I left off in small, deliberate ways. I returned to photography, something I had given up years ago. I took Eliza to the park and shot in black and white, light and shadow, movement and stillness. She laughed in frames. I printed one and taped it above my desk. My father came by more often. He helped me replace the kitchen cabinet Ava always said was crooked. We didn't talk about her. We didn't have to. Sometimes he just sat with Eliza while I answered emails or cleaned out old folders. That was his way of saying, "You're not alone." I spoke to Dr. Patel weekly. We didn't dwell on Ava, not anymore. We spoke about transition. About stillness. About the difference between healing and returning. "You're not the same man you were in that first session," he said one day. "I don't want to be," I replied. I started volunteering at a local family support group. Not as a speaker. Just as a listener. Other men shared their stories, infidelity, abandonment, broken trust. I didn't give them advice. I didn't need to. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can offer is proof that someone like them made it out on the other side. Eventually, I started writing. Quiet posts on a blog with no name, no comment section. Just entries. Reflections. Fragments. One of them read, "You think you'll scream when it happens. But most betrayals arrive like fog, quiet and slow, and covering everything before you realize it's there. What matters most isn't what you shout. It's what you do when the air clears." People started to share them. Ava never reached out to apologize, and I never asked her to. The legal settlement was fair, shared expenses, reasonable support, equal rights on paper. But emotionally, we were worlds apart. Eliza adjusted better than I feared. Kids don't need perfection, they need presence. We cooked pancakes on Saturdays. We read books in bed. On her 5th birthday, she asked me if we could plant a second tree in the backyard. "One for me, and one for you," she said. We did. And when we watered it together that evening, I looked at her and realized, this was my new life. Not a rebuilding, not a restart. A clean beginning. One day, I'll tell her the truth, age-appropriate, quiet, and honest. For now, I just hold her hand as she sleeps and remind myself that justice doesn't always look like punishment. Sometimes, it just looks like peace.